All right, welcome back. This is the video number 3 for Money Talk. And I want to just deviate for a minute with you and I talk about brain development. You're wondering, what does that have to do with money? Well, the adult brain takes about 25 years to fully develop. During our lifetime, there are at least 4 phases of change that require trial and error: personal awareness and help from those who are farther down the path of maturity. And I want to discuss those with you for a few minutes here. Phase 1 is what I call the child's brain, or the begging brain. Wants and needs are expressed or demanded with no thought of adding value to the family system. This is kind of what you would expect from a child. This is what's called a consumer-based mentality. Phase 2, this is the teenage brain, or the bartering brain. Wants and needs are achieved with a trade. This is a producer-consumer bartering system, and it relies on reciprocation rather than demands. This is what you would expect from a teenager. All right, phase 3. This is the adult brain, or the bettering brain. It accepts responsibility for self and others in the family, and it realizes that life is not fair for those in leadership. I mean, parents have to sacrifice for the family or it doesn't work. Adult brains realize that you can't run a budget with a child's brain or a teenage brain. The 4th phase, mature brain, is the benevolent brain. This focus is on giving back to a greater cause or for greater reasons than personal reasons or family care. This is about paying it forward or leaving a legacy behind. The benevolent brain is thinking beyond self, beyond family, beyond their lifetime. I mean, this is why big buildings are named after people's names. So here's one last exercise for you and your spouse to do together. Go back through the list of the 10 relationships and rate yourself and your spouse in each area, and as to whether it's a child, teen, adult, or mature. And then ask these questions. Which money relationship do you feel needs your greatest attention right now, and why? What would be a reasonable first step for you in each area? How could your spouse support you in each area? And then the last question you can ask in this exercise: what would not be helpful as you seek change here? Now, I want to share with you some additional points before we conclude this series for you to consider, all right? One point is, money conflict usually implies opposing relationships with money. For example, if you're struggling talking about debt, you likely both have a difference in that relationship that needs to be addressed and processed. What's the solution? Let's go back to one of our tools. Proactive conversation to find the differences. Let's take emotion out of the picture. Proactive conversation to find the differences. Another point to consider. Money conflict gets worse with time without awareness. The longer you have conflict over differences in money relationships, the more room there is for resentment. What's the solution? Another tool we talked about: intentional planning. This means that your conversations need to include pen, paper, and a calendar. Remember, money's not emotional, but the longer you put off these conversations, the more emotional the talks can become. All right, last point I want to share with you. All of us probably have a little bit of child or teenage brain when it comes to money. Somewhere in one or more of these relationships, there's just a little kid that just wants what it wants. So what's the solution? Well, I'll suggest this. A little ownership here goes a long way. This is not a place to criticize, but rather it's a place to become more aware so that you can help each other in your respective areas of weakness. You know, my wife and I for years had a number between us, and that number was how much we individually could spend on one unnecessary item in a month without consulting the other one. This saved us a lot of conflict. But before we did that, we had unnecessary conflict. By the way, it was $30. One last disclaimer. A lot of the language in this and other video series with Tricord implies that you're married. Some of you may not be married. Certainly that's your choice. And my point here is not about judgment, only to be helpful. If you're planning to get married, then my belief is that this information will be abundantly helpful to you, since you're maybe getting in on the ground floor of awareness. If you're not planning to get married and you're struggling with financial issues, then your struggle, in my experience with couples, is going to continue until you're in a committed relationship that is not easy to walk away from. I've been working with couples for a long time, and I have yet to see a couple resolve money issues outside of a committed relationship. In other words, if one of you can simply walk away with relatively no barriers, there's little incentive to work out complex financial issues. Now, please, I assure you that is not a backhanded way to guilt you into getting married, but instead it's an attempt to explain why this may be such a struggle in your relationship. I really hope these videos have been instructive and practical, giving you loads of direction when it comes to talking about money. I hope it's given you lots of tools to utilize. And these exercises, let me say, they're very helpful if you'll go back and go through them and work them together. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at Tricord or check out any other resources that are of interest to you. We want to be here to help. Thank you for watching, and I wish you well in your efforts to have productive talk about money.